Tourism meeting for February 27th. We're going to have to move along reasonably quick today. I'd like to just introduce Ms. Hyde from Ferryman as a member of our team here. And also we have Taylor from the Queensbury Hotel is on our... I'm sorry? Tyler.
I've been called worse.
Okay. From our Queensbury Hotel as the fifth member of our advisory board. And just so you know, before we get started, the advisory board did meet for an hour and a half after last tourism meeting, good discussion, and we also had a phone conversation on whatever you... everybody talks on the phone, so we don't all have to be there, and that lasted about an hour, and it was really productive. This is the group right here, except for Sam's not, he couldn't be. So just so you all know, that's our advisory. We're going to try to sit them in the corner so we can recognize them. All right, to move on to start our meeting here, I need a motion to approve the meeting of January 24th. All right, we got to go. Can I get a second on that? I can't see who it is. Mr. Stroud, I'm sorry. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, good. An action agenda, we'll start. Joanne, you want to go with the resolutions?
Good morning. So we did have a presentation last month from the folks at the Great Escape, but the one last thing that we didn't do was officially get a resolution request to bring that to the board. So based on the presentation last month, I would like to ask for that resolution request.
I'll move that, Mr. Stroud. Okay. We got that going. Any other questions on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Thank you.
Got the second one?
We will have with us today Josiah Brown from New York Best Vacation Experiences. We have worked, the tourism department has worked with Josiah in the past. He offers a range of promotional services around the state for us, attends shows, he is out there in his truck, and he represents us well. I think he knows the county well, but Josiah is here today to give us a little presentation. We would like to move ahead with this contract with him for 2017. Josiah?
Sure. Thank you for inviting me, Gene. Good to see you.
Unfortunately, I'm going to tell you, make it quick and short.
Sure. I will move.
You got 1 minute.
I will move very quickly for you. So, I got this name, the New York Sherpa. This nickname kind of stuck. I've traveled over 500,000 miles across New York, and I've done virtually everything, or about half of the things you can do. And so I had a passion a few years ago, which I'm just going to explain to you very briefly, to start a brand that would fit what I felt was needed in New York State tourism across the state. I believe travelers, the personal interest is the beginning of every vacation, right? We talk about counties, we talk about destinations, but really people travel by personal interest. And that was a belief that I had. I also believed that to get somebody to go somewhere for the first time, which is a big thing in New York, that the power of recommendations moved people in a different way. It's kind of why we sit on TripAdvisor at midnight, scrolling through what people say about a place, because we want somebody to make it a little bit safer. And so we launched a brand 5 years ago called New York's Best Experiences, which was my attempt to curate the state through the lens of what I had done for 13 years, which is to travel the state and had experienced things, and then take that message to the public in a very simple way. So part of my job was to go and select what I felt were 15 of the best experiences that you could have in New York, to make our mission very simple out on the road, to recommend into the state travelers who wanted to do things that fit their personal interests. And that's what we set out on, and Lake George has been a big part of what we've done. We decided to take the mobile visitor center to the public. So instead of waiting for them to walk through our visitor center, which I found running the video network on the New York State Thruway coming out of the city, people would come into those visitor centers and say, I didn't know New York had so much. I didn't know you had lakes and rivers and hiking and all of these amazing things. And we set out with a vision of what happens if we took the visitor center to them under this idea of New York's best experiences. So we wrapped a truck to be able to go to fairs and festivals, traditional travel shows to be very tactical in what we did, and then carried this brand New York's Best Experiences. We launched it with a very particular mission, and that was to show off the personal interests of what you could do in the state. So our booth was unlike most other booths at shows or festivals, because the biggest message in our booth were things to do: rafting, paddling, hiking, biking. And then people would come into our booth and say, where do you do that? And we'd say, well, you can go to Lake George and do this and this and this. And we would make little itineraries, and we would make notes in their travel guide. So we have for several years carried the Lake George travel guide and made recommendations out of it to the public. We have, if you notice in the booth, that there's displays. So we give you personal interests and then displays of where you can do those personal interests. And those displays look like this. They feature something famous about a destination, and we kind of speak in the language of famous. This is what our booth looks like. Traditionally, we only carry 15 destinations on the tour, and that was to make it a little simple for this mission of bringing first-time visitors into the state. And I've worked in and out with I Love New York on several of the campaigns that they did. We actually ran their tour for 6 months when they were just getting back up and going. We're able to be very tactical, which was one of my original visions in sharing the passion of the state. I wanted to get out to people that didn't traditionally walk into a travel show if they didn't know what those were. So we've been on Jones Beach. We've been on the footprint of the Baseball Hall of Fame induction. We just this last spring, we were able to be right in Grand Central Terminal, which is kind of interesting to get in and out of, but it was totally worth it for a travel experience, and just people's eyes are so wide when you explain what we do and what the state has to offer. And we're very passionate about showing people what is in the state, both north of the city and also from other states. We just got back at 10 o'clock last night from Springfield, and one of the number one questions we'll get in Springfield is, where do you fish in New York? And we'll say, we have fishing zones larger than your state. So it's kind of cool. So this is actually a picture less than 24 hours old of the truck right in the aisle at the Springfield Sportsman Show, and you can see that Lake George is the driver door and the driver passenger door featured there, and we get a lot of buzz around the truck. We also developed a travel guide based on the philosophy of that people can travel by destination, or they can flip it over and they can search what they love to do. So our index is sorted by what people actually want to do. So it says cabins and cool towns and fishing and hiking, and they get an idea, and then they open it up and they find a destination and the top things that we think that destination holds. And again, that's the psychology that we have researched for how to recruit first-timers. So the whole brand has been built around bringing a first-time visitor in, which is 11 times harder than getting a repeat visitor. So what we are really on the road, to kind of wrap it up, is we're a brand advocate for Lake George. We believe in New York so much that we decided to double down on that belief, and we built our own company around it. We built a brand advocacy, which is, we're third-party credibility, because we're out on the road singing these destinations' praises. Without them, everybody is going to say their destination is the best, but we really curated it. We put it to a standard, and we invited members in to be a part of it. And kind of like where you would do PR, and the PR is evaluated if, I Love New York pays their PR company $1 million, and the company comes back and says, well, we got about $8 million of earned media for you. We're a little similar in the sense that one of the main values we bring is that we touch such a wide swath of the East Coast and so many shows that are very expensive for about a third to 25% of what a destination could touch those shows for themselves. And we also are able to maintain the same level of travel guide and print distribution as somebody having their own booth. So many of these destinations have leaned on us to fulfill some of that travel guide distribution for them, but for us it's more than just travel guide distribution, because we're actually answering questions and flipping people through travel guides and making notes. I travel with a camping expert and a fishing expert and an outdoor expert in addition to what I've done, and I've come here and camped with my family and have done most of the things around this area. There's always something I haven't done. Usually somebody will come afterwards and say, have you done this and such? And so then I'll put that on my list. Lake George is very popular, very good brand. We have the top 3 destinations on the tour are Niagara Falls, Lake George, and the Finger Lakes. You are the leading travel guide distribution, though. You are still, this is probably 4 years running now, the #1 travel guide we distribute. And when we're out on the road, Lake George is very synonymous with the Adirondacks, which is a wonderful thing. I was there as a kid. We love Lake George. These are some of the things that we hear. The RV show that we did down by Rockland County 2 weeks ago, it's everybody's wanting to get their new guide because this is something that they leave in their vehicle most of the year. We look at Lake George on the road, just a little bit of feedback. There seems to be about 3 Lake Georges when we're on the road. If we drew a line across the lake at about a mile up, from a mile south, there's a demographic that tends to really enjoy that product. A lot of your firefighters, policemen, contractors, your snowmobilers, your ATV enthusiasts, that type of demographic is very interested, speaks very highly of what they do and where they stay, and we hear a lot of stories. And then your 1 mile north tends to depart into a different demographic. It begins to skew a little higher dollar-wise, usually something a little bit more of a discerning traveler. And then boaters, and boaters run the whole range of income and demographic levels, and they have their own take on Lake George and enjoy it very much. So we've kind of fitted our recommendations to those 3 styles of who we talk to. And we always encourage people that when we're out on the road, we have principles that we follow, that I've followed for years in tourism, which is to lead with what you do, where we would say, we would use a term like hiking or camping as the lead term, and then tell them where it is and how we can best fulfill that. We've had many businesses along the years who have given us brochures where the top of the brochure was the name of their business. And we would say, you know, it might be better if you put the name of your business on the bottom and put what you do on the top, because somebody walks in and they see Romantic Getaway and they say, oh, that's what I want to do. And then suddenly the name of the business makes sense. So we always try to lead with the personal interest, and we talk about them. You know, marketing is a lot of times talking about ourselves, but we're in this age now where instead of talking at people, we really are able to talk with people with social media. And we looked at this road tour as an ability to talk with people, not to just talk at them. So that was a new evolution that's happened, and certainly social media allows that. And then there's something for everyone. That's been one of my banes in tourism, is that I encourage people not to say something for everyone, because it usually means not something special for me. We try to sift the destination down for what they are best at, and then tell the public that this is what you can enjoy there, and this is what you will safely enjoy there. Because with limited time for vacations and limited finances, people want to go somewhere that is famous for their interest, and that will be some of the energy that propels people forward to actually choose something. So if I said Lancaster, Pennsylvania, most people would say, oh, that's Amish country. Well, that serves them very well, being known as one thing. And so we try to do that for Lake George and all the other destinations that we talk about. We try to make them very focused and show people, you know, this is where you can go out and touch the Adirondacks. This is where the air is clean. You have to be in the mountains to breathe mountain air, and that type of message really resonates downstate. And so we, you know, probably passed through that slide too quickly, but we do New York Times, we do Boston, we do Philly, Springfield, Hartford, Long Island. We touch a lot of markets where that message reverberates, the purity of what the Adirondacks has to offer, and the ability to have amenities close and wilderness even closer. So we've enjoyed the support over the years. It's been a very embraced tour by the industry, and we're growing into obviously more stops on the tour. Our travel guide is also growing, and we appreciate the support, and we're very passionate about promoting you as one of New York's best experiences. So raced through a lot of information.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, I need a motion on the resolution to go ahead and work with the New York Best Experience. Matt? Ms. Frazier? Any other questions?
Just go, so is this in line with, from what we got from BBG and all of that, you know, the way forward for the tourism department?
I would say that it is. We have worked with Josiah in the past, and we've incrementally added a few things to our agreement with him, so this is the first time he's actually come to this committee. But in the past, we as a department were going out to shows, and as we've stepped away from that, Josiah has stepped into that role for us, and it's a little bit different from we pay NYSEA $200 a show to take our travel guide, but it's a travel guide sitting at a table. And I think it's what you can hear from Josiah, that he knows this county well. He comes and vacations here with his family. He can speak to it, he can answer to it, and he can provide recommendations. So I think that he is our ambassador on the road, in a sense that we have stepped away from that a little bit. So I think that he does a real good job for us, and yes, I do think it's keeping in line with recommendations.
Mr. Stroud?
Just in summary, Josiah, what are we getting in services for $17,400?
So you become one of the 15 destinations on the tour, and that is you get a representation, a display, and a travel guide distributed at each of the shows that we go to. You also then get a content marketing, what we call a content marketing spread. Our travel guide has no ads. It's all member-based. So you get a content marketing spread in the travel guide where we tell your story through our voice and make recommendations. And then you get the 2 panels on the truck, which is the driver door is the premium inventory on that truck, because everybody says, oh, Lake George, I love Lake George, even though 2 feet to the left is one destination and the other side is another one. And then there's a couple of shows that we do that are very large shows, like the New York Times show and the Philadelphia show, the Springfield show, where we take over 50 to 70 feet of the show and sell booths or sell tables back as a co-op. So the tour, the guide, a few of our larger co-op shows, and then the truck. Am I missing anything? I think that pretty much encompasses it. And then this year we have NewYorksBestExperiences.com launching as the home for all of the content that we have generated for the guide, and that presence will be included at no additional charge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 quick questions. One, when you're making recommendations to people, I first of all, I think this is fantastic. I love how active you are on social media and how you're promoting our region. I think it's great. But when you're making recommendations, are you making recommendations for where people should stay when they're up here? And I'm just wondering, to that extent, are you working with our Warren County Lodging Association? Like, how are you connecting those people to actually come up and spend the night?
Sure. My original vision was to do just that, to try to trip plan for people, and I do some of that based on specific questions. A lot of times it comes down to a very specific question. Have you ever been to the Sagamore? Have you ever been to Six Flags? That type of a question, and we can speak to a property. Normally what we do is we're finding most of the time we're inspiring them to the destination for the first time and using some of the famous things that they can experience here as the jumping off point to actually come. We do have members. We have, about a year and a half ago, we entered into having members, which to be a member of New York's Best Experiences, you had to meet a criteria, which was a minimum rating on social media, that we had actually been there and experienced it. So we have some members that across the state that have come on board, and we'll tell the public, we have some of our members in our book, and we'll recommend them because obviously they are who we have invited. But as a rule, my team will always make the correct answer to any question, regardless if they're a member or not. So if somebody comes up and says, I want to stay at Fort William Henry, or I want to stay at the Sagamore, or I want to just stay down in the village at a property, we answer that question as directly as we can, regardless of it. So I would be happy to be involved, have a meeting with the Lodging Association and hear from them.
So, I mean, many of those members are here today. I'm sure they'll hit you up on the way out the door. But my second question is more towards our tourism department. Will we see a reduction in our travel costs to go to conferences if we're paying, you know, for him to be able to represent our area? We aren't going to duplicate those efforts, right?
We don't do any consumer shows at this point. We've, over the last 2 years, stepped away from that. So Josiah is our feet on the ground.
Thank you.
And I breezed through the slide very quickly, but we did, the shows we did last year, just the shows would have cost about $35,000 plus staff and travel, and that's the $8,000 part of the contract.
Well, just one last question. I know. Sorry,
Sure.
Gene. I know you want to get going.
Take
This
one
is
question.
great. I wish I had off to talk to you. But how do you track? Like, how do we know the return on the $17,000? Like, how will we know what we've been able to reach? I mean,
We've always been open for creative ideas on how to track back to a consumer coming to a show, picking up a guide. We are very much in the branding/brand advocacy position of a budget, where very often that section, when I used to run marketing campaigns, I'd have my budget split in third, and a third was in a category of bulletproof, a third was exploratory, and a third was brand advocacy. And that's most of what we do, because we're out on the road speaking about Lake George, talking about Lake George, distributing travel guides. The side of my door travels 50,000 miles a year across the East Coast. Branding. So a lot of what we do is branding, brand advocacy, and PR, which have always been classically difficult to pin down to an actual metric or number. With the launching of our website, we hope within about 18 months we'll be able to demonstrate some metrics on the web. I was a little stubborn in the beginning, and I said, I am a road show, and I didn't have a website for a few years because we were talking to real people. I believe that no matter what technology gets invented, standing in front of somebody, person to person, and talking to them and inspiring them and saying, no, there are not bears that are going to, because, in the city, everybody thinks that there's bears upstate, and upstate, everybody thinks you're going to get mugged in the city. This is like the great divide that I deal with. So there's some people who give us a specific brochure with a specific code and a specific coupon and some of these kind of things. But in this day and age, a portion of any budget needs to be dedicated to PR and brand advocacy, and that's what we do. And as a business, I'm looking for ways digitally to build, return on investment as I go forward as it relates to selling content marketing, selling space on the website. I'm just not, I'm very dedicated to being a tour right now, so.
All right, put that, I got a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed, thank you. We'll move to number 3.
I have business cards on this table and a box of our travel guides if anyone would like to grab one. Thank you very much for taking the time with me today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Number 3.
So the next couple of resolution requests are a little bit on the housekeeping side. In 2017, our committee knows that there is an additional $400,000 in our budget for demand generation and promotion. So we asked the treasurer if we could just have that $400,000 be a single line item with a different code in our budget for this year. So in order for us to do that, we just have to have a recommendation from the committee.
Matt? Mr. Dickinson, second?
I have a question too. Could you reintroduce to me what enhanced promotion is for $400,000?
So for 2017 only, there's $400,000 that came out of the occupancy reserve to the tourism department budget. And the hotel owners and our businesses said we would like more of the dollars to go toward advertising and promotion and demand generation. So at that exact moment in time, last October or so, we didn't have a specific plan, but $400,000 was set aside. So as we move into 2017, one group in particular has approached us with an idea, and that would be the Great Escape promotion, the co-op. So that's $150,000. And internally, we've talked about a couple of other seasonal promotions that would be something new, something very trackable, something that would increase demand and awareness to the area. So aside from the $150,000, the remainder of that is not spent at this time.
Okay, thank you.
That's what that is.
Right.
Okay.
So I have a motion and a second, all in favor? Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did you have a question?
No, I didn't.
Okay. And opposed? Passed. All right, let's move along to number 4.
Okay, so within the department, I can approve things up to $2,000 without coming back to the committee. We took a look at the purchasing policy, and there are other departments that can approve things up to $5,000 as long as the money is in the budget, and certainly with our committee chairman approval. So in an effort to just kind of streamline things a little bit, we would request that the $2,000 threshold be increased to $5,000.
Mr.
Make the
Stroud?
motion.
Do I get a second? Matt, second. Okay. Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passed.
Thank you. And the last is the agreement with the Village of Lake George for funding in the amount of $25,000 for the Visitor Center up in Lake George Village, and that's an annual resolution request.
Mr. Dickerson? Will I get a second? Matt? Donald? Okay. Any questions? That's been going on for about 10 years at least, so it's nothing new, okay? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. All right. Tourism update. Joanne.
All right, so a couple of quick things. Supervisor Sieber had asked us to look into some of the Smith Trend and the republication fees and the policy that goes along with that. So I did send to all of our committee the attachment, so if you've had a chance to take a look at that, you can understand what the reasoning behind not sharing and how much we can share. And there is some additional cost. So at this point, we can share with our committee and our advisory group things related to Warren County. If you want to extend that to our other segments, our other market segments, there are additional fees associated with that. I don't know if we want to take that step at this point. Anyone have any questions about that?
Just so we can share it with members of the advisory group, and will you be including them on your weekly or
Yes,
monthly?
absolutely.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
So we don't need to, at this point, spend additional dollars for Essex and Saratoga and for the republication. We have it ourselves, committee and advisory, but to share beyond that.
I guess Mr. Chairman, what will the role of the advisory group be in looking at things like this? I'd be more comfortable in knowing that perhaps you're discussing some of these things with them, or even like the contract we just did with New York Best Experiences, to hear what their feelings are in terms of a recommendation back to the committee. Will that be something we'll hear?
That's definitely what we're working on.
Okay.
And we did on our last...
Tom, do you have any comment on that? We've already discussed some of that stuff, yeah.
We want to be involved. We met with the tourism committee following last month's meeting. We also had a conference call last week.
Yep. Last Wednesday.
Last Monday. It was a spirited, great conversation. Touched on a number of these things. So we're providing our thoughts. One of the things that we also said, maybe I'm speaking for myself, is that we don't want to be the end all where it says, well, the tourism or the advisory committee has rubber stamped it. That's not why I'm here. We just want to be able to provide input, what our thoughts are, but ultimately it's with this board. Obviously, I think you know that. But if there's something that we feel strongly about, we're going to feel strongly about it, and you'll know that.
Okay.
I don't know. Hopefully, I answered your question.
Yeah, you work a lot more with these reports than when I work with them. I just wondered if that was, you felt that you were getting sufficient
I am
information with that.
fine with the direction of the spring travel reports. From my perspective, I'm not sure.
No, I mean, that's great information. We've been looking at them very carefully after I've been studying them, so it's very good.
So they'll receive it from us, and on our last call, we actually pulled it up on the screen, and, a couple of people pointed out some different things. We didn't all necessarily agree, but it was good. It was a good conversation. Thank you. Okay, so to that end, thank you, advisory group, for coming today, and we have met a couple of times, and again, we did go over what would be on our agenda today, in addition to, just there's some other things that we're looking at in terms of new marketing opportunities for the department, and would like the group to weigh in with us. One of the things that Sam Luciano was unable to be with us today, but he has brought up the idea, which we have heard before, about a booking engine. So he works with an organization that does a booking/call center. We talked about that at pretty great length, but that is something that we would have to go out to bid on. So Peter took a few minutes and called Julie over at purchasing. We're looking at some of the other RFPs that have been put out for online booking. Some involve, it would be a lesser commission fee than the OTAs that are out there. So we're looking to offer a benefit to our local properties. So maybe with the consensus of the committee, we would move ahead into looking at that a little bit more, and then that would go out to RFP. We would entertain, any of the responses that come back and see if there's a good option out there for us.
One thing specifically with this particular RFP is it's money doesn't have to be allocated to it because it is a revenue generator for the county. So a lot of these proposals will come back at X commission will be taking from the sale, X amount will go back to the county, and X will be taken for the property. So one of the things that we've heard right now is maybe it might be like a 10% commission rate with a 2% coming back to the county and 8% being retained by the company that implements the service. That's kind of like the ballpark that we're looking for. And the RFP that comes back will just be vetting capabilities and the commission rate and what is the most appropriate package for the.
Mr. Leggett?
Thank you. Is this something then that's going to be tailored for the hospitality group of the county? This is for lodging, this is for rooms?
At this point, we're looking at lodging.
And this is something that the county would do instead of, say, the lodging association do for themselves?
It would be part of our website. So our website, it
Okay.
would just be a seamless, you'd see a book now
Find our website.
button,
Gotcha.
and you would click,
Okay.
and then it would take you to that outside interface.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? That's it. Finish with any...
Unless
one more?
the treasurer is here.
I was just looking around. I saw him stick his head in, but...
Well, so he did leave a letter with me of
Okay.
collections, occupancy tax collections to date, $4,121,589. But what that is $8,000 above last year at this time. So we have exceeded our 2015 collections by $8,000 at this point, and he will still continue to collect into mid-March. So that's not a final figure. So we had a pretty good year in 2016.
Because a lot of the business like myself, we pay December, January, and February. I don't pay it until March. So by at the end of March, you'll have a full for the last three. All right? So anything?
I'm good.
Okay, we'll move on. Tanya?
My topics for discussion are not motor coach related this month, they're international marketing. So there's just a few things that are going on. Powwow, International Powwow is going to be held in Washington, the 3rd through the 7th, so there's some preliminary things that we're planning. I'm going along with 8 other TPAs or tourism promotion agencies under the umbrella of I Love New York. So we will have 3 booths during the duration, and we'll be doing appointments with international tour operators only. So we need to have an itinerary to be able to sell while we're there. So what we're developing an Adirondack regional itinerary, because international travelers are not just going to come to Lake George, they're going to want to stay a longer period of time and see more things, do more things. So we're working on developing that itinerary, and we're going to have a FAM tour prior. So I Love New York will select 5 tour operators to come up to our area, and we will FAM them around for one day, and then we hopefully have an appointment with those same operators when we're down at Powwow. We do have our itinerary kind of in place now. Thank you to the Queensbury Hotel, who will host them for the evening. We're going to do a little bit of City of Glens Falls, the Hyde Collection. We're going to do some zip lining and then head up to Lake George. Only have them for about a 24-hour period, but try to do as much as we can in that period. And then Joanne and I attended another international function, which was down in Saratoga last week. It was a workshop with Tour Mappers, Inc. I Love New York brought that to us. Tour Mappers is an inbound tour operator that is looking to book Lake George product. So they will sell that product to the international market. It was just really informative, and then we have to go back to our suppliers and kind of convince them to contract with Tour Mappers. And Tour Mappers will be attending IPW as well, and the suppliers or the attractions, the lodging properties in Lake George that contract with them, they will be on the itinerary, and Tour Mappers will sell that itinerary as well. So it's kind of a partnering opportunity for Lake George suppliers and for us as a destination. So.
And there's no expense to us. Tour Mappers will go out and sell the destination, and the only time that there's an expense involved is if someone actually books at your hotel, and there's a little commission involved. But your name, our name as a destination or whatever property happens to participate, their name is out there all the time, and they're being actively promoted. So I Love New York came back to us, and Tour Mappers came back to us and said there's an interest, because all of the millions of people that are coming into New York City have seen New York City and they're looking for more. So they go to the Finger Lakes and they go to Niagara Falls, and now they'd like to come north, and that hasn't been there before. So we think we're filling that niche.
Tanya, thank you.
Other questions?
Kristen Hannafin, CBB, real quick.
A few minutes?
We got a couple of minutes. We're already 20 minutes over.
I'm used to being quick. I'll be quick. Did everybody get a copy? I sent this out last week on Thursday of the report, and I'll pass them around to anybody else who wants them. All right, quick and dirty. Here we go. Good morning, everybody. So, month of February, very busy month. I'm going to go over the highlights since most of you have received the CVB report for the month of February. Happy to report that actually we have 4 new events that were booked this month, and I've got some site visits set up. The Adventure Travel Conference has officially let us know that we have Beat Up Montana, so they will be coming in 2019. So I will be setting up a meeting with the strategic director in March, and we'll be having that site visit happening. This is a very exciting conference to be coming. We've got about 300 attendees potentially, including travel writers, media, tour operators, receptive tour operators, and other individuals looking to locate and relocate some businesses, adventure travel businesses to the area. We heard a little bit earlier about the biking, the mountain biking, and the way that this is growing in trails, and this fits in perfectly with this conference, what they're looking to do to be able to elevate and highlight all the adventure experiences, our tourism experiences that we have here in the Adirondacks and the Lake George area. So for us, it is a really terrific opportunity. We'll be working with I Love New York and a number of other partners. We'll be pulling together a planning committee in the next couple of months, but all these pieces sort of need to come together first before that happens. So I'll keep you posted. Second new event is the Adirondack Pub and Brewery is going to be sponsoring a brand new 5K, which will take place on September 16th. It's being managed by a company called Odyssey out of Philadelphia. They also operate a very highly successful half marathon they've been doing for a number of years. So this just came up, and this will be starting out for this year. American Breweriana Conference has booked for 2018. They'll be held at the Ramada Inn. And the IAFE, International Association of Fairs and Expos Conference, which we've been working on for a little while now, has booked the Queensbury Hotel for spring of 2018. So those are 4 of the very large ones sort of coming to our area. And the other site visit I'll have in place on March 15th and 16th, I'll be meeting with Aaron Delmar from Adrenaline Sports Management for the Santa Hustle. I know that there's been a little bit of conversation in terms of the date. We're looking at the 3rd of December. We're looking at potentially the 17th of December. We'll be talking with the mayor's office and a couple of the other folks in the area to figure out the final date for that, as well as the course for the half marathon and the 5K for December. I apologize, I have a cold. I'm also happy to report that we had the second meeting of the Sports Advisory Group last Wednesday. And we're well on our way to developing a regional sports commission as a subsidiary of the Lake George Chamber of Commerce and CVB. This is pretty exciting. There's a lot going on. We've been talking a lot about sports and sports marketing, sport tourism. It was a very productive meeting, so we'll be moving towards some decisions on the overall structure, the board, the mission statements, and funding sources to develop that subsidiary group. There's a lot of great benefits to creating this unified sports commission for our area, to bring larger events, larger sporting events. So we'll be moving that forward in the next couple of months. Finally, I'll be getting ready for NASC, which is at the end of March, National Association of Sports Commissions. I've got about 39 appointments currently booked. I'll be getting the final listing in the next couple of weeks. Working on a master calendar for all of our events in the area to see where our gaps are. We've talked a lot about events going on in Queensbury, Lake George, Glens Falls and the surrounding areas, and it's critical at this point that we start looking at where those empty holes are as we bring new events in, as I'm looking to talk to the rights holders and the events folks to really see where we're not double booking certain things on different weekends and during the week, but really to find, where's our gaps? What really makes sense? What kinds of events make sense? Do we want, 6 car shows in 1 month? No, we don't. But we want to have that balance and find really the events that seem to make sense for our community, the events that can bring new demographics to our area. So that master calendar hopefully will be done by the next meeting, and I'll be able to share that with all of you as well. Quick, 3.5, 4 minutes maybe?
Go ahead, keep going.
Try to talk fast. But if there's anybody have any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
Am I really fast?
All right.
Quick and dirty? All right.
But I promise you all, these meetings will have to go into an hour, and I'll get with the clerk and make sure we get our time in here. All right. Privilege to the floor. Anybody have any questions that they'd like to speak up or say anything? All right. With that, I motion to adjourn. Dickinson, Matt, Donald, all in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. A lot of information this trip.